Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast. It's a dark and cloudy day, and sort of it resembles the podcast that we're having to conduct here. David looks like he's in his evil lair, in some sort of 90s cartoon of some sort. And today, David, what are we doing? We're conducting Clemson's basketball's autopsy. We're sort of having to dig deep. We're playing Operation. We're going to go deep into the places that everyone's already been to for the weekend, but you and I also just got back from Providence. We've been sort of trying to untangle the pieces there. You've been busy, I've been busy, but today we get to sit down and actually break this thing down. But David, how are you? How was your flight home from Providence, Rhode Island?
Well, you know what? The flight was great. Beautiful, beautiful. I got to do a new flight path kind of down the Jersey Shore and Delaware up Chesapeake Bay. So that was great. But here's how I want you to start. You talked to a young man in Providence outside who had the perfect description about what happened to a lot of people with Clemson's first round loss. And he did it in a perfect kind of Bostonian accent. I want you to go ahead. I want you to say that. Let's just get that out of the way. I have laughed about that since that night. Go ahead. Tell us.
Oh, I don't think I can repeat what was being said on air. I don't exactly think it was like there was a guy. So David and I, we went to dinner with, it was me, Faxon, and my mom. We were all chatting about the whole thing, trying to, at least. It was a loud Southern bar in Boston. But I'm talking to a guy in line to go to the bathroom, and they're talking about parlays, and particularly the Kansas-Arkansas game that was going on. So I asked him if they had bet on Clemson, and he did. And he said in his Bostonian accent that they effed him. And we can't particularly repeat that on YouTube, otherwise they'll strike us. But I
just say fracking.
They fracking screwed us or something like that. It was. I try to remember exactly what it was. But it was one of those things.
You say Clemson cost him a lot of fracking money.
Yeah, and so you have that situation there. But ultimately, Clemson falls to McNeese in a historically putrid first half, and sort of in a similar script to Louisville, a comeback that was all for naught. Too little, too late, as I put in our gamer lead on TigerNet.com. But David, you were right over there as Victor Locken got smacked in the face and fell to the ground, and I felt like that should have been the first sign that Clemson wasn't exactly ready for the punches McNeese was throwing.
Yeah, and it's funny. We were over there. One of the photographers who watches such things, I think you know her. She came over, and she has been quite the student of Clemson warming up lately. And whereas they had not looked good for a few weeks, even warming up, she said, they are hitting all of their shots today. This is going to be a good day. It was not a good day to begin with. But Victor gets smacked in the face. And, you know, there's a couple things. Number one, and I think this kind of set the tone. You know, you're starting Chauncey Wiggins because Dylan Hunter's out. And Chauncey gets two, not one, but two absolutely wide open looks. Wide open looks from three. Bounces them both out. And on both of them, it looked like Ian Shefflin was right there for the rebound. But balls were being tipped, swatted at. McNeese is wanting it. Clemson looks like they don't want it. And, you know, all of a sudden, McNeese is getting to every loose ball, to every rebound. Some of McNeese's shots were so bad. And I tell this to people all the time. Sometimes when a team gets offensive rebounds, it's because their initial shot was so bad. And you've got the defenders boxing out underneath, and rebounds are bouncing long. McNeese was getting all of them. They were getting them inside, outside, loose balls, scrums on the floor. And Ian Shefflin said it afterwards. You know, they wanted it more. Man, you hate to hear that. And then I go back to, you know, people want to blame coaching, and they, you know, you're going to put it on the head coach. But if you're not ready to play at that level, if you're in Providence, Rhode Island, you know, and you're in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and that team across the way is coming out, nostrils flaring, fists clenched, ready to go to battle, and you're not ready, that's a problem.
It's like you showed up with a rock to a knife fight, and the McNeese was slashing, and you throw your first rock and it doesn't hit, and you're like, well, I've ran out of rocks. And so for Clemson, and it was really fascinating too beforehand, because on Wednesday, specifically for some people like Victor Locken and Jaden Zachary, who had never been in the tournament, had expressed such excitement about this is the spot, this is the time. And I talked to both on Wednesday asking, what's it like to see the March Madness logo? What's it going to be like in those first 5-ish minutes? And they described, oh, it's going to be really exciting. I think there's going to be some nerves, but once we get past that, it's go time. And I think their version of what March would be like versus the hellscape that they faced in that first half is probably entirely different. They probably woke up, maybe they're pinching themselves, being like, what nightmare am I in right now? Is this some cruel joke? But Clemson, I'm sitting next to Faction Childress on the court side, and he's just repeating that this does not look good. This looks sort of dead. And a couple of friends texted me. I'm sure, David, people were reaching out to you as well, going, do they look sort of dead on TV or on court? Because it looks like that on the broadcast. Like they're sort of not playing at the same pace and speed as McNeese. And you fast forward that to Saturday when McNeese played Purdue, and McNeese tried to replicate that same gritty, quick, we're going to punch you in the mouth first and see how you respond. Purdue watched that Clemson game and was like, we are ready. There are two scouts right behind me. And they looked particularly shocked because they probably expected Clemson to win, but they probably took those notes and said, we need to be ready for that first gauntlet assault. And once they sustained that, it was all Purdue from that point there, and probably should have been Clemson had the things gone differently.
Yeah, Clemson just maybe hits 2 more 3-pointers in that first half to get some momentum, but 1 for 15, 13 points, just getting out-hustled, out-rebounded, 10 turnovers there, kind of right off the bat. No, it just was all bad. It was all out of sync. We've sat behind Brad lately. We saw him in the ACC tournament where he had smacked Chauncey Wiggins on the butt and go give me something. I need something out of you. But he wasn't getting it from Jake Heidebreder. He wasn't getting it from Chauncey Wiggins, not until very late. And it's a Clemson team that can score. As you look at the fact they scored 14 in the final 45 seconds.
They got the capability.
40 minutes and 14 and 45 seconds. And you go, what? Where was this? Where was it? Ian Shefflin did not look 100%. 1 point, still managed to grab double-digit rebounds. Victor Locken fouls out, very silly foul with 6 minutes left. And I kind of go back to, at that point, you're down by double digits. You're getting your butt handed to you. You block the shot of a shorter guy, shut your mouth. Like, I don't care if he's talking. I don't care. Just hush. And instead, he not only commits the foul, his fourth, he then gets teed up after a referee kind of gives him a warning look, like hush. And he doesn't hush, and you get teed up, and then he's out. And you go, that's kind of the day it was. And, now Brad and company are left to pick up the pieces, as I wrote. And so that's kind of where we go next, Grayson. We've already seen the first domino fall in the transfer portal with Asa Thomas. Do we think more are coming?
Particularly, I think so. I think this is a group that's going to sort of look, if not totally different, entirely different from 2025. And, the more I thought about it this weekend, David, and you can push back if you feel like I'm out of step here. This loss felt like it would have been if this Clemson football team we're about to cover this year that brought back so much talent, that had a lot of promise. It'd be like if this football team lost in like the first round to a lower seed. Like, let's say that Clemson was hosting a Q final in Atlanta and a Arizona team came into that game and beat them up in that first playoff game, and you're just left your head scratching going, where does this team go from here? Because there's going to be a lot of pieces leaving at that point. So obviously the Dylan Hunter injury had a lot of impact, but there's going to be a lot of moving parts here. Asa Thomas has already entered the transfer portal, someone that played barely any time. And it felt like at points that he could have been utilized when you had Jake Heidebreder, Miles Hall. Like, a lot of players are struggling, and you have Asa sort of standing to the side, and you felt, what would 2 to 3 minutes of him look like off the bench? But we never really truly got that, and we won't ever get that. I wouldn't be shocked if Chauncey Wiggins enters the transfer portal. Just feels like his time here is hit its peak this year. It felt like when he was starting to find his confidence and was a little more assertive in the offense. And then Dylan Hunter has his day against Duke in terms of efficiency, and Wiggins is relegated to the bench. More names potentially could be coming, but the transfer portal is wide open. And so Brownell is going to have to replace 4 starters at the very least, with Hunter, Victor, Ian, and as you've said, Jaden Zachary's waiver is likely not to be accepted by the NCAA. So this is big offseason for Brownell, and it's a test for his portal philosophy, as he's been able to bring in players, but never at this magnitude.
And it's interesting too, just talking to people this morning, that started early. As you know, I was on Slack fairly early, this morning saying, hey, the texts are starting to roll in. And, one thing to kind of keep in mind here is that, it's not always going to be about playing time for these guys in the portal, because you have guys who maybe didn't produce, who are going into the coaches going, can you spot me 5? I need more money. I need more money. I need more money. And it's like, yeah, well, your production maybe hasn't been there for the money. And you have to look at it like, I'm a big baseball guy. You know that the Dodgers have silly amounts of money, right? They're always over the luxury tax. They're always overspending on things. The Yankees, the Red Sox. Well, guess what? Clemson's kind of Atlanta, or maybe Kansas City is a little bit better deal. We have to be careful with the money. And you can't go out there and just throw, money at people. Had one person texting me this morning saying, every former starter that's going to be in the portal is going to want $1 million.
That's
a lot of money, So if you've got to go out and replace 4 starters, well, guess what? I don't think they're going to be getting $1 million. And if you've got guys who have ridden the bitch, or, have played sparingly, have not played a lot of minutes, or just haven't produced, well, they're not going to get raises, not after the way that season ended. It's going to be fascinating. And, I think that one thing we're going to see, Brad Brownell is going to be out of touch for a little bit. Brad Brownell's got work to do, him and that coaching staff. They've got to go out and find people. I think Walk-On's Bistro is probably going to have a lot of Brad Brownell in coming up soon, with targets visiting and guys coming in for a look at Clemson. It's going to be a fascinating probably few weeks. And, if you're a team that's still playing, maybe you're going to get a little bit behind here, because now the teams that are done, and guess what? It's everybody but how many? 16. Everybody's done, and here it is. It's Portal Monday. It's going to go, and it's going to go fast.
You'll get a head start where they did not get one last year. And
right.
It really felt like to me as the seconds tick off of that McNeese game, how much star power Clemson maybe has lost in the transfer portal, where now I think it's probably in a player sense, they're maybe able to look at it a little more rationally. There's not as much emotion invested into it as maybe a fan after that kind of game, where you can sort of look at more of the body of work from certain players. And you can look at guys like Jaden Zachary, Locken, Joe Girard, even Jack Clark, who have great years when they come to Clemson and play well, but there's also some misses that Clemson's going to have to really seriously focus on. Does Brad? Do you have any room in that dark room for Brad to sort of focus and run the phone calls?
If he wanted to come over, yeah, because until about 3, it's going to be quiet, and then that's when my feral children show up from school. We do have to get some light in this house, in this room, because it seems like we only do the podcast on cloudy days. We have a cloudy day around here about once every 21 days. Feels like it's always on podcast day. I need lighting on the walls. I need to brighten it up in here. Yeah, this is going to be a great few weeks, and we're all following our brackets. How are your brackets doing? That's the big question.
So the 2 brackets that I am currently seriously paying attention to is one that I'm in with a Clemson group chat of mine with just a bunch of great dudes who are huge big fans, and we're doing like a money buy-in bracket. And I had to sweat out Florida yesterday, but we're doing good there. As long as Florida wins, I think I'm in a good spot. And then the family bracket, you want some family bragging rights here, and my bracket is toast because I had St. John's. So that was sort of a mistake, but I wanted to be a little different, and it ends up I ended up not realizing that St. John's can't hit a 3-pointer or a shot in any sort of manner against John Calipari in Arkansas, which was really, by the way, and talk about sort of cool crossovers. The fact that they were there and you get to sort of pass Pitino or Calipari in the hallway of those stadiums, and you're like, okay, that was cool. Just a little small note there. But just one final thing on Clemson hoops that I would love to address with you specifically, and I think would be really good material for this podcast. And please, guys, if you've stayed this long and you've listened to Dave and I's ramblings, this is the section you're going to want to I think you'll have the most to say. So hear us out. How does Clemson define success this year? There was a piece that I was thinking about, sort of the inner workings of, okay, but they're not going to lose to McNeese, so let's sort of hold this off. And great mistake, right? Um, but you have this big regular season. You take down Duke, you take down Kentucky. You sort of proved in a sense that last year's Elite Eight run wasn't as fluky as maybe it could have been. Where if they had maybe been 19-15, say this year, it's like, well, they put it together when they could, and that sort of peaked. And so in the back of your mind, you're thinking, what is sort of the potential of this group with a Dylan Hunter? There's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas with this, but it feels like, and it's fair to say that you're remembered for what you do in the postseason. And so a lot of fans will remember the season where you break the program wins record, but in the same breath, you remember putting up 13 points in the first half of a March Madness first round against a mid-major team that is now, whose head coach is now going to be in your conference. How does this group, or how should Clemson remember this? I think that two things can be true at once, but it's kind of tough, I think, if you're a fan, to remove a really bad taste in your mouth after you've been riding high all season.
It's a good season, but it's disappointing. To me, I have said all along that if you look at the net rankings, you look at where Clemson was, you look at the state of the ACC, this should have been a Sweet 16 team. And then you see what happens from there. But this team should have made the Sweet 16. That's just my feeling. Not around the 32 team, not, losing in the first round. It is a Sweet 16 team. You go out, you win 27 games. That's great. You finish, in the top three in, your conference, and you go to the ACC tournament, you beat them as SMU. But then you lose to Louisville, then you wind up losing there to McNeese. And so with everybody that you had coming back, when you knew that you were going to get Chef back, you're going to get Chase Hunter back, you get Jaden Zachary in the portal, Victor Locken in the portal, Miles Foster in the portal, Jake's coming in, he's going to be ready to play. And then all of a sudden you go, this has a chance to be a pretty good team. And people pick them to be at the top of the ACC because the ACC is bad, right? But also because it's a good team. And so for all of the 27 wins and for the win over Kentucky and all of that, you are defined by your postseasons. That is why Dan Marino, who never won a Super Bowl, bless him, and it wasn't his fault. The Dolphins were just never very good around him. You go, you're not mentioned up there with those other guys. You are defined by the postseason, and that's what this team's going to be defined by that, 1-2 record once the lights came on. You beat SMU kind of in a slugfest up there. You lose to Louisville, you get smacked around, lack of effort at times. You get smacked around by McNeese, lack of effort. It's disappointing. Should have been a Sweet 16 team.
Disappointing certainly is going to be the word, and I think a lot of Clemson fans that have reached out have expressed that, and also I think a little bit of concern as to the amount of production that's leaving this group. And the ACC is only going to get better. I think you loaded up some new coaches at Virginia and NC State, programs that are trying to be serious. Virginia's always been serious about basketball. Just had the Tony Bennett disaster take place right before the season started. Miami is going to be loaded up. They're always going to be a threat with NIL money. Will Wade is going to be a force with NC State. They're going to be a tournament team next year. I have no doubt about that. And then you have Duke and North Carolina, who will always have their fair say in this conference. So felt like a missed opportunity for Clemson. And I think a lot of fans will direct their frustrations as the offseason continues. David, do we have any more final notes on this group? Do we want to quickly touch on Clemson's series win over Wake yesterday real quickly?
Let's talk some baseball fast. I had a zoo day yesterday with the church, so I didn't get to go to the Clemson Wake Forest series finale. But how about the Tigers? Down on Saturday, 10-0, make a valiant comeback, fall short, down 6-0 again Saturday, cut it to 6-1, then 6-3, then it's 6-6. You have a chance to go, win it there in the eighth, but you can't. How about Lucas Malstead? Nails, man. Nails is what that kid is. And, he goes out there and just throws, zeros up on the board and gives Clemson a chance to win it. I get tickled at people who, get on the board and they want to bust on a Tristan McClatty. And, oh, my God, I never want to see him take a swing again. I never want to see Jaron Purify again. these kids are good, and it's college baseball. It's high level college baseball. They're allowed to make outs. They're allowed to have a bad at bat here and there. Are there concerns with his pitching staff? Absolutely. A very well known college coach, texted me during the game after Justin Lagurnick got the start and said, if you're questioning whether you should start him, you probably shouldn't. And so now they do have to figure that out going forward. And this weekend, the pitching looked a little bit like a mess because Darden didn't go as deep. Got to remember, that's a really good hitting Wake Forest team. Darden's been really good. So hopefully there's nothing wrong there. He didn't go as deep. You have to bring the bullpen out early. Yesterday, you give Lagurnick a start, maybe because you did have to go to the bullpen so fast on Saturday. Lagurnick is not good again. He's got great stuff. He has no idea how to harness it yet. That's part of his problem. They've got some guys that we hope are coming back from injury, but we will see. This is a team that I think Aaron Fitt of D1 Baseball said that Clemson games are a slog. Aaron Fitt has watched a lot of baseball, and he calls it a slog because Clemson grinds out at bats. It feels like every player on this roster has a 3-2 count twice a game, and they just grind pitching staffs down. And that's going to have to kind of be the deal as you get good enough pitching and you just grind down these good pitchers as the season goes on. They've got Coastal Carolina PC this week at home, and then it's a road trip. Georgia Southern on the road, Georgia Tech on the road. And then they've got to go out to the left coast and play Cal. So it's Clemson, first ever trip out west. So we'll see how that goes. Good baseball team, getting some recognition in the rankings. Got to figure that pitching out.
Isn't it funny that the first sport that Clemson's going to travel to the West Coast for is going to be baseball? Isn't that funny?
The SMU SID up at the ACC tournament was a little shocked because SMU comes here to play Clemson this year in football. And he was talking about some of their road trips. And I said, well, you realize Clemson will now go its first 2 years in this new look ACC and never make a road trip past the Mississippi in football or basketball. And he kind of turned and looked at me. He's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. And I think I heard him mutter something about lawsuit and stupid. So I don't know, but I'm just kidding.
Some are saying.
We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you get that win yesterday against Wake, and it was the most back-itch win ever. Where you just slog it out, you steal a second, you get a wild pitch to walk it off. I mean, it just felt like the most Eric Backich ending of all time. And then he gets his POV video.
Elite coaching right there because he has one of his offensive timeouts and he calls it. Pano's a slugger, right? And so I'm like, are you really going to be bunting Josh Pano here? But Pano shows bunt. It's a straight steal of second, not a hit and run, not a bunt and run, nothing like that. Pano's got the bunt out, showing bunt. So the catcher has to lay back, can't throw down to get McClatty. Elite coaching right there. It's the way the game is played. Then McClatty takes third on the grounder, scores on the wild pitch. And you're right, the most backage way to win a game ever.
Have you seen his POV yet? He put a camera on his hat and they had to cut out half the video because he keeps going, let's go the whole time.
Right.
I just thought that was a fun little. He's been kind of active on social media. I don't know if you've chatted with him about his Venom edits. He's been making the most goofy social media posts, and I'm all for it.
And he does. I don't think he really likes the in-game cut-ins though, where it's like, hey, let's put the headsets on coach because he's like, can I shut up now and transfer it to this player because I'm really done talking to you at this point. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
He cuts it off and he answers one or two questions. Then, all right, here you go. Someone else.
It's ridiculous that you make a coach do that every game. Absolutely ridiculous.
I know. I've never understood that because they don't do that in the majors at all. I feel like that would just be that just gets shot down. No one's talking.
No, these guys are trying to work. Let them work. Let them work.
Trying to watch the game. Well, I think last year, it felt like last year every time he took an interview, something bad happened. So it's just sort of in the back of his mind. He's like, I got to really focus here.
Whoever makes these decisions, let the man work. It's ridiculous. Nobody cares.
Let him cook. All right, guys. That was fun. Thank you so much for tuning in to our off-season autopsy. We're gonna word it like that for this podcast. That's fun. But guys, thank you as always for tuning in. We want to shout out Herb Tyler, Chick-fil-A, for tuning in. Guys, baseball season. I know they're on a 2-week road trip, but when they return, you're going to want some items for tailgate. And as my stomach growls right now, the only thing on my mind is Chick-fil-A, but not today. Gotta save some bucks. But guys, thank you as always for tuning in to the Orange Crush podcast. Thank you for the sport. Spring football is later today, and baseball rocks and rolls. Stay tuned to everything. Thank you so much. God bless y'all, and take care.